Hello, and welcome to Valerie Maynard Lost and Found, a capsule retrospective of the over 50-year career of one of the most profoundly innovative and politically engaged artists of her generation. The BMA is thrilled to present this incredible cross-section of the artist's works, which spans a diverse array of media, including prints, sculpture, and unique works on paper, as well as some of the artist's most celebrated series. My name is Leslie Cozzi. I'm the Associate Curator of Prints, Drawings, and Photographs here at the BMA. Today, joining in conversation are Carroll, a Baltimore-based filmmaker and writer, as well as the artist and star of the show herself, Valerie Maynard. Thank you so much for joining us.
We are honored, truly blessed to be able to have a legend like Valerie Maynard in Baltimore City, who serves as a mentor to so many of us, has served as a model for all of the possibilities that can happen when you are dedicated to what she calls your human beingness and dedicated to community through your art and through your genius and through your creative practice. So I feel really, really blessed to be in conversation with you, even though we have conversations all the time. So I'm really impressed and moved by the rhythm of the works that you create. And it reminds me a lot of the relationships that you had with so many jazz musicians like Max Roach, like Abby Lincoln. Can you talk a little bit about how jazz or music influenced some of the works that you were creating?
As a very young person, I grew up across the street from the Savoy Ballroom. And so it meant I heard music before I knew the bodies, and I saw musicians all the time coming in and out. And I saw, just because transportation wasn't what it was or is now, not even remotely, you saw everybody on an up-close way. And nobody's stopping to gawk at them or anything. It's just like they're part of the community. And so you get to see a lot of people just in everyday kind of situations. And then you also get to hear, but you don't even know what you're listening to. It's always there.
When you're making the work, are you feeling that kind of rhythm? Are you listening to particular music as you're making?
No. Sometimes I'm silent for a long time. I don't have any formula of when I'm working, what I'm starting on, or what I'm working on. I'm usually kind of scattered. I don't just do things as just that unless I'm doing a commission or something like that, where it's one subject, one kind of material, and physically have to get there, and I have to have the equipment with me, and so on. So that's another kind of planning. But just in life, just looking out the window, I would sketch something or remember something, hear something. So, and just drawing the street, drawing the subway. It was nothing, no special way that I went at my work or what I observed or what I was going to put down. I never knew.
I think one of the first pieces or collections that I saw from your work was the Lost and Found collection. Mm-hmm. And I was so moved by how many images and how many people were featured in the collection, as well as Toni Morrison's introduction to the work. So can you talk a little bit about the Lost and Found collection?
I guess trying to remember feelings, things that you've seen, some that's lovely, some that's not lovely. I've walked a lot. I explored a lot all the time from the time I was a young person. I'd go in any building, look at anything, and most time people thought my parents worked there, or I must have some reason for getting in there, but I was just curious. And that curiosity just grew. And at some point, my father said, "You went where? You went how far?" So he took me downtown and bought me a motorbike. He said, "This bike gets too far." So I, of course, widened my horizons that way. I didn't have to ask permission to be me. basically, whoever that was.
Impossible things happen when you come upon Valerie Maynard's work. To be near these prints in their company is to be both silenced and articulated, to become deeply rooted in earth that is soaring under your feet. These lost and found prints from the No Apartheid series is the medium we dream in. I think when Toni Morrison described the work in Lost and Found collection, she talked about it or likened it to dreaming, you know, like sort of a dreaming while awake. And there's so much about it that does feel like a dream. It feels meta. There's your use of layers, your use of technique. Can you, and of collaging. Can you talk a little bit about the process in making the works that are in the Lost and Found series?
Yeah, I did a residency for this, a printmaking residency. Trying to think where I was. And, I know. And when I got there, I showed up with my brother-in-law in a Mercedes. And so they said, what kind of artist is this, you know? This wasn't Blue Mountain, this was Women's Studio Workshop. And then we sat in the car and talked another couple of hours. So they figured, what the hell is this? What is this? So I finally get out the car and he gets my bag, so they think they got to build a hotel for me or something. So I just walk in and I said, listen, where's the print workshop? They said, where? I said, okay, you got anywhere in here I can sleep so I don't have to walk in the middle of the night or whatever and work? Well, there was a place right up on the top. And the next thing I said, y'all got a junkyard? They said, junkyard? I said, yeah, close by. They said, yeah. I said, take me. Now I'm going. They think that this is my chauffeur and they done made up this whole story and I'm asking them where the junkyard is. So I go and I just start throwing things in a pile. And I said, would you throw that in there? And so that's where the things that you just see, they're pieces of things aside from what I drew and collaged into it. And then I said, can I stay in the studio somewhere, someplace I can sleep so I don't have to go up and down this country road? They said, yeah, there's a. So that's how I started. And that was our introduction to everybody, to them. So every day they come in, they said, can you use this? I said, yeah. And then when nobody was there, I might have screwed a light fixture, take something out, paint it, put it back. So I had a lot of fun with them, and I went back several times. Black
women are a recurring kind of very prominent feature in your work as well. And one thing that's really, I think is goals for me in regards to when I look at you, I mean, I'm so inspired by so many things that you do, but is the relationships that you continue to maintain with women throughout your life. And so can you, like I'm thinking about a photograph of you when you were young with Tony K. Bambara and a collection of other young writers and authors and poets and activists.
I don't know, I was always a reader, and we just kind of met each other kind of hodgepodgey. You know, it wasn't an effort of any kind. And then we would, maybe one day a few people in over the studio and a few people more, we might sit around, get some food, eat. But we weren't looking at each other like we were something special. You know, it's just a room full of black women. And I had mostly lofts and studios, and writers are a little more tighter than I am as far as space is concerned. But I didn't think that, I thought anything about it. You know, not who was who or what, who just was.
Community is something, an image that, or a theme that recurs in your work, the importance of community.
Well, I didn't go to art school or do anything orthodox, so most of my stuff I learned like going to just being in the village. Worked in a lot of kids, so parks and community centers and all that kind of stuff. Of course, I get to see them and meet their parents, and they could be any nationality at all. They would invite you to dinner or something. So every time it's spreading into different genres, different people. The elders didn't speak English. They just sit there and nod with what we're talking. So it's really wide and varied, but not with purpose, that I'm doing that, knowing that, going there. It's just evolving.
Mm-hmm. You've traveled to so many countries, especially in the continent of Africa. And when I look at works like the No Apartheid series, I think a lot about how so much of your work, not just as an artist, but again, as a human, pursuing human beingness, has been about liberation.
I had no idea this series was going to happen, but Spelman was doing a show of Black women artists, and they wanted in the show stuff that had never been seen. So I went up to my barn, and where I had rolls of paper and tools and all of that, and I had no idea what I was going to do. So these first ones were painted up in that barn with that show in mind. And I didn't know what was going to come out or what size it'd be and all that kind of stuff. So that's where these two emanated from. I always have stashes of stuff, tools, paper, or wherever my last trip, I would just leave it there. So I'm not a planned person to what I'm going to do, what material I'm going to use. So these two showed up, and I said, well, I'll put these in the show.
The collection is called No Apartheid, and so much of your work has been about liberation, right? Whether it's the liberation of your brother, the critique of the prison industrial complex, right? It's been about freedom because, you know, as you've noted, freedom is a birthright, right? It's not something that you should gain or earn. It's something that all of us coming to the world with, right? Being free. And so can you talk about at what time or what were you feeling that compelled you to create a series that explicitly is talking about the end of apartheid in the literal sense of the word apartheid in South Africa, but also just general oppressions happening to the Black and brown folks all over the world?
You know, I don't know if I knew the word, but of course I know a lot about being incarcerated, unfairly treated. One of the things that used to happen to me, I used to take the train to Florida, and I would never go to sleep. I'd just be at the window. So I've seen prisoners laying down railroad tracks, all kinds of things, as though they're animals. The guard is there with a whip and something. I've seen more things that I could begin to calculate. So when I work, it's like being in a trance. I don't draw this out. I don't do anything. I just start getting this intrinsic thing of spilling out everything I ever felt or seen, trying to. So that's what you're looking at.
One of my favorite Valerie phrases is, they can never take your smile, which you've said to me multiple times this year when things have been difficult. And so I had a couple questions about this work and about that idea of perseverance despite adversity. The first is, you know, how has your work enabled you to persevere?
When it says, get me another heart, and what women have gone through, what Black women have gone through, and what is still going on, maybe more than ever. It's just dressed differently. It just sounds differently and whatnot, but that same struggle, that same, how do I get this kid through school? How do I get something on the table? So the keys and everything, saying we have the keys, but how do we open it that we can have health, safety, all the things that every morning women wake up worrying about. So that's in homage to that continual struggle.
You had mentioned to me that the keys were significant, that they weren't just like new keys you bought.
No, I've been collecting keys a long time. You know, didn't know why I was collecting them. The keys are meaning that there is a way out. I just have to find this formula. I just have to find this meal today to feed my kids. I just have to hold on so I can get another month's rent together. There's a way. I just have to keep believing there's a way. So the keys are the openers to the next day, the next minute, the next food, the next protector, so on and so on.
Valerie, can you walk us through the process of creating this piece?
Okay, I'm in my barn, and I rolled out this, I've got a roll of paper this big, so I just rolled it down. And I rolled another piece next to it. And I have no sense of who's coming. In other words, I haven't drawn anything or fitted into the paper, nothing, just the paint and the paper. And the spray paint. I don't know what each spray can is going to do. It has a mind of its own. And I can't make it do anything. I just have to have a kind of faith that when I hit it, I'm not going to lose that face or that hand that I was able to, or those 4 faces falling out the back. It's like a perennial gamble. So I'm seeing her occur. And I'm just taking it a little further. I put a necklace on there. I decided to put keys as her blood coming through her arms. I could lose anything with one can. Just, it's gone. But somehow it just stayed alive.
It's amazing.
And I kept going.
It's an amazing piece. And you know, this is something that we see a lot in your work, these kind of multiple profiles. Why is that?
We have multiple feelings, multiple ways of seeing how we respond to the day that we're in by whatever happened yesterday. It's like we're not stagnant in any way. So how can I say that from generation to generation or life to life, that this evolving is always going on?
When you first showed me the the Lady Liberty series, I think I gasped, you know, because you're so humble about how brilliant you are. Like you're like, whatever, let me show you this thing, and you unroll, you know, this work, and I'm just like, right, like why? We've never imagined liberty, right? We've never seen those icons, that kind of iconography of a Black woman, a free Black woman as liberty, right? And there are rumors that say that the Statue of Liberty, the original design, was that of a free African woman, you know? There have been people who have tried to disprove that, say, nah, it was never Black. But there's something so refreshing and so affirming about this series, the Liberty series, where again you are centering Black women as powerful liberatory forces that are ultimately saving all of us, right? Saving the world. Can you talk about the Liberty series and why it was important for you to center or make liberty or personify liberty as a Black woman?
Or freedom. The first things are those black and white charcoals. And I'm in Blue Mountain, one of my favorite places. And I don't know this is what's going to happen, but I've taken big rolls of paper up and everything I could think of. So I don't have a plan when I do this. She comes out. They come out. And I'm thinking, I know the story of the Statue of Liberty in France and bringing it over, and I also saw it a lot because I grew up in New York. So I just thought, what would liberty be without getting to the babies first? You know, not after you've become an adult or think some kind of way. It's more a feeling and a kindness and a consciousness and but you know what you've lived already, and you don't want to inculcate them with that, no matter what.
Do you find that as you're creating, there are certain mediums, certain materials that you're drawn to, like, oh, okay, I want to play with this, or is it more of a kind of whatever is closest to you for you to get the image out?
Actually, to be perfectly honest, I see them for the first time like you do, even though I'm in the process of doing it. But when I stop, that's when I see it. I'm not at all planned in that way. It's revealed in the process.
So this was created around 9/11. And so I wonder if you could talk about why at that moment you wanted to make works about the Statue of Liberty and the unfulfilled promise of America.
New York alone, we have 80,000 prisoners in jail in one state, and most of them are wearing the brown silk, melanin, brown skins, tan skins. Still, more than ever, the facilities are larger. I have a niece and nephew, maybe 3 of them, that worked in these jails and retired from there. Knowing people in the jail where you're working, that you grew up with, that's their uncle or their cousin and all that, it's such a huge thing. And why would we have to lock up that many people for what, when the people who should be locked up, they got the keys.
So nature, natural elements, the ancient wisdom of trees is something that I've learned a lot from you, from our walks together, from hikes. And I'm always amazed in what you are able to do with wood, that you can see a stump of wood, a block of wood, and turn it into something as intricate as the sculptures that you create. Can you talk a little bit about your process with wood? How did you begin working with wood, and why is it a medium that you kind of feel drawn to?
I like trees, of course. I don't like hurting them, but I would never take down a tree. I'd find a piece or something like that. So all the wood that I've carved, basically, I picked up from somewhere. I'm at a friend's house and they'll say, oh, so they cut down some trees on the mountain, let's go get some. This particular, it wasn't white at first, you know. I don't know how she got to be white. But she, at first, you saw the wood in black. And as time went on, you know, she just, this is who she was. And this was a tree that grew well when I was living in St. Thomas. And so I had cut up a lot of them off the tree and they dropped around the tree. And I said, those make some nice bells. It's not drawn first. It's not planned first who it's going to be, or what the gesture is going to be, or what it's going to feel like. I don't know that. This piece of wood I picked up. A friend of mine, Maurice, was going to Europe and he went on a freight boat and he wanted me to go. And I said, I don't think I could stand it. We went to see him one day. That was it, me and another friend who I'd known a very long time. And my friend who I'm talking about, Maurice, said, hey, they cut down some trees, so why don't you get some and take them back on the boat? So that's where this piece of wood came from. Anyway, long story short, he died. And the thing about him was he was like a Pied Piper. He was a musician also, but always children just follow him. So these nails, I lived on the West Side Highway, and my father used to work down there on the docks. And so I used to run up and down that river. There was piles of them for years, and I'm just opening up crates. So I picked up these that you see, took them to my studio, and I sorted them by this curve that, you know, I kind of sorted them kind of loosely. And they represent all the people that they brought here, didn't want to come in every kind of circumstance. The people who work there till sun up to sundown, you know. And my father worked there, and he had to have protectors to leave with his money. So my mother would come midday, like she's bringing his lunch, take his pay on her, and leave. And then he'd have a safer way of getting out without getting brutalized. That was way back.
So much of the work that you create are homages, you know, homages to people in your community, to your times, you know, to all of us, to the conditions that we've survived, to the miracle that we are, you know. And there's something so affirming about that, and so healing and recalibrating about that.
Thank you. Yeah, he was a great spirit. And he had the friend that I came with, he was also a great spirit, no longer here. But yeah, I've met many beautiful souls in the process.
One of the interesting things about this exhibition is that we've kind of created this smaller chamber in the back, which is actually where work that's sort of earlier than most of the work in the front of the exhibition actually lives.
Yeah, this piece amazes me. That it seems to defy physics. Sky, you know, it reminds me of the piece that Elizabeth Catlett did, Lift Every Voice.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it feels like a reminder again to just, you know, stay encouraged and keep our heads towards the sky, keep pushing. Can you talk about this piece a little bit? What inspired it? What encouraged it?
A piece of wood mostly. And I was moving on St. Thomas, and the guy chose the steepest way to go where I was going. And this fell off the truck with a few other things. And so he lost one of his fingers I had to put back. And I forget what else. But I was afraid that he had really broken. You know, I was like going through, oh my God, what happened to you? And he survived it. I don't remember what I was thinking or really what studio I was in when I carved it. When I moved to St. Thomas, I just took a container and I took works that I had done and a lot of material. So I didn't do him in St. Thomas. He was carved. Don't remember much. I just wanted him to have a healthy arm and hand and say, I'm still present no matter what I've been through. I'm here.
I wanted to ask you about your identity as a printmaker. How did you come to, you have a really important history as a printmaker. You established the print workshop at the newly founded Studio Museum in Harlem. How did you get interested in the discipline of printmaking?
Oh, interesting. I can remember the time my brother was in jail and I had jumped in my car and I had to find some place to live so I could find a lawyer and all that stuff. So I found a basement apartment in the Bronx. And I had my dog. It was me, my dog, 4 cinder blocks and a door for me to sleep on. So I started going to every lawyer's office in New York, Jersey, talking to them, I need a lawyer, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I finally did find one. So while I was doing that, I decided that in the tub, I said I need to make some prints. I started making prints when I had the thing at the Studio Museum. I just got some tables and some benches. Somebody said, well, these people have a press they want to give away. So that's how I got my first press that I used for the class. I built the tables and the benches and whatnot. And I started just having all ages come up to the Studio Museum.
And so you basically taught yourself printmaking and then taught other people printmaking. And why linocut? I mean, you worked in other media, but it seems like linocut was a really important particular vehicle for you.
I like black and white.
Yeah.
I like the directness of it,
Yeah.
the way it speaks. But I had a more dramatic kind of way of wanting to speak to people quickly. And I thought black and white prints did it.
So when I think about the linocuts that you're making in the 70s from this series, this body of work, one thing that's really beautiful about it is that it feels like a lasting homage to Harlem, you know, and to the people that you witnessed there, the people that you knew there and met there. And this is a kind of portrait of Harlem and of those communities that doesn't really exist now, right? A Harlem that has been transformed by gentrification, it's been transformed by so many things, right? Can you talk about the importance of community and where you were living, what you were doing at this time when you were imagining these works?
Actually, I was living in a place that's like my studio room. That was the whole apartment, with the bathroom and whatnot to that door. And it overlooked 120, I was on 125th Street, so that meant it was going on 28-8. And this was a friend of a friend that they had gone to school together, and she invited her to come, to Harlem that day. And so she brought her along when she came to the house. I didn't know her, had never seen her before. And I said, would you mind if I could draw you? And I had this blanket. I always have all kinds of blankets and stuff. And so she said, sure. So I did it rather quickly. Actually, it was just inspired by the moment. I hadn't planned it or anything. So that's why it's just titled Barbara with Maurice. I never saw her again. Everybody thinks that's me.
It's not? I thought it was you as well.
I know.
It feels like the giant that you are, right? The giant that you'll never claim that you are.
No, you're not skinny head in the back.
Right.
That is big.
But the giant that you are, and how, again, you've served as a teacher and a mentor to so many of us, and that you give of yourself and of your knowledge so easily and with so much humility. And so much of your journey has been not just being an artist, but also functioning as a teacher, as an educator, working with youth, taking them out to the woods, teaching them that it's okay to be safe in themselves, to be safe as they are. Can you talk a little bit about why that is so important to you and to your work and practice, the role of being a teacher and of being a mentor for younger generations?
Well, actually, I'm very bashful. And I didn't say a word for a very long time, so it was not my plan to be teaching or do anything like that. No, it wasn't. It just happened. That's Vincent in the background. I think he was from, I forget what island he was from. He just showed up in there. So I just did that quick little silhouette of him there. And that's really not me. But I can see why people would think it.
And for many, many years, you were working, primarily as someone who was doing education, teaching how to purchase homes, teaching how to save your money, make clothes, all of these things. Can you talk a little bit about your role as a teacher in the community?
I wouldn't think of teacher as a mentor, or I knew that everybody has something that they desire. And it may not just have come with them, it might have come with their great-grandmother or grandfather or uncle or whatever. I had a lot of those. And so I would always say, you can. Whatever it is that you think you can do, you can. You just have to start. And you can't have a time limit on it, or you need a certain amount, or none of that. Just that you feel this, or you feel this is where you should be. And maybe you're just lining up with the rest of your ancestors. Maybe you're just taking your place when you mature and you decide, no, I'm not going to live on a slippery slope. I'm going to make something here that I can help, share, be with, laugh with. Sometimes you just get food together and you'll just sit. We do this all the time. We sit and eat and talk, and you think not one person in that room had a worry in the world. But that was never true. But just those moments, sticking them one next to the other, brings health, brings the musculature to try the impossible, because it is impossible, because we live here. It's impossible. We're standing in impossible. But we try. He walked into the print workshop. He just got out of jail. And he was standing there. I didn't know who he was or anything, but I knew he was standing over there and just watching, you know. So finally I just said, would you mind sitting for me? I did this really quick. And anyway, that's him. I don't know his name. It's in the print workshop. And often, like this guy, he used to come and just stand there too. Usually had a camera, just, yeah. So I just call him General Fred because he was wearing that jacket like, what you call it, the singer, what's his name? Jackson. Remember he had the military jacket? Anyway, so I would see him and he wouldn't say anything. He'd come stand a while and then disappear. So one day I said, you mind if I draw you real quick? He said, no. So I just called him General Fred because of the jacket and the opulence. The jacket.
And you often represent your sculpture in your printmaking
Yeah, I
practice
may
that's
stick one
happening
in there.
in that work. Why that kind of self-portraiture through the act of?
He just happened to be there.
Yeah, you're just doing what was by you, using what you had. Your incredible efficiency as always.
No, I didn't put it there on purpose, it just be there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so most of these, well, I was living on the river then when I started them. And I was just drawing with a knife instead of a pencil.
Can you talk about what this work represents?
It's people that you see everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, it's never as before.
Yeah.
Our lives, always seeing people in the street.
Yeah.
I was seeing subways, buildings, and same thing that's going on now, except they're tribes. I have a tribe that lives where I live now. And they move from one corner to one corner. They're at the light getting a tip for cleaning a window, but they have McDonald's there. So they're not going anywhere. So the police chase them and whatever. You're not there because you want to be there. So we have that population parallel to whatever we think we're doing, whatever we think we are, what we've accomplished. We haven't accomplished anything because those people are here every day.
I mean, it speaks to how amazing your work is at giving a voice to people who are voiceless. And then the last question I have for you is about this amazing object, Rufus. Rufus, and this is the original stone carving that you subsequently cast and editioned in bronze. Can you talk about the creation of Rufus? Where did you find him?
I was in Vermont. How I got to Vermont, I had a gallery I used to carry around. I would put pictures in black people's offices and whatnot, and I'd show up every so often and switch them. And I was doing that day. And as I was leaving, I was putting stuff by the elevator, and as I was leaving, the guy said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to my truck to put this work in there. He said, didn't you hear what we were talking about? I said, yeah, but you know, none of my business. They were going to do a residency for young blacks in Vermont for the summer, and they were going to hire these artists. There was a Cuban sculptor, there was different people, and he said, would you be interested? I said, So anyway, long story short, I went. And there was a swimming hole that you had to swing out on a limb to get in the water. And so I found this piece of stone in the bottom of that lake and had no idea what I would do with it. And actually all the side of his face is exactly how I found him in the water. I just pulled the face out of there. But it's basically the stone that I found.
You told me the story that when this was at the Studio Museum,
yeah.
ladies who liked his luscious lips would sort of come up and surreptitiously try to smooch him.
All the time, all the time, all the time. So we had a guard that when you came into the museum and I'd come into work and he said, got 3 today. So he would act, the guard would act like he wasn't there. You know, he'd go somewhere, but he's really knowing that they're not going to resist this guy.
That's amazing.
It was amazing.
I mean, it's amazing that, you know, that your work can elicit such a visceral reaction from people, that they're literally falling in love with it on the spot. And then Rufus, the name, does it refer to a specific person, or what's the significance?
It's a name that could cover any black man from the South, so it's one of those old names.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have been their language or what their parents would have named them, but there were a lot of Rufuses in the 20s and the 30s and whatnot. So I needed a name that was, you know, singular in its own self, but powerful. And these are working people laying train tracks and cutting down trees, doing amazing stuff.
Right, the hard labor.
Yeah, and I wanted that face to go past what that daily grind was and still be, you know.
Looking towards the future.
Mm-hmm.
How did growing up in the Great Depression, and at this point, as you said, the impossibility of living here, surviving generations after generations of just seeing us continuously fight for liberation and continuously have those fights try and be countered, try and constantly have state and governmental factors try and destroy us at every end. How did being a kind of survivor of the Great Depression inform, you know, the kind of freedom that you move through the world and the way that you pursue your art?
That's a big old question. It was nice meeting you. I don't know. I don't know, but during the time, you know, if you had a pot of soup, you shared it with everybody. Or like my grandmother she had 5, 6 sons actually. She cooked every day, and my grandfather made Sunday breakfast. And I didn't know until, I'll go back to him first, I didn't know until I went to Nevis, where he was from, that was like their signature meal that reminded him of home. So he always did it every Sunday to let my grandmother rest so she can then start cooking for the rest of the family. That was just on Sunday. But also throughout all of Harlem and anywhere we were, we always stretched it so we can stop by Miss So-and-so and give her some. That's just, I had 6 pots that used to fit together. And so after everybody eats, you're not going to eat it till you're full, but enough. And then you went out to Miss So-and-so's, drop one off. You'd stop by so-and-so, just everybody did it. If you went to the butcher and you got some, what you could afford, and they know how much kids you got and everything already, at the end they're going to throw in some chicken feet, some beef bones, you know, because you're going to run out of this before you get to come back to the butcher. So that was just like breathing throughout everybody, whether they were working, not working, whether they were indigent, whether they lived on the street like they do. It's just a regular thing.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think that kind of hustle and give, you know, mentality influence the way that you make art? You know, because when I look at your art, it feels so fearless. You know, you're like, oh, okay, here's a new material, I'm gonna try this. You know, here's I'm gonna play with this, I'm gonna play with that, see what happens. You know, there's no hesitation. You know, it's just, I'm gonna do it. There's no wall, there's no restriction. And that's so affirming.
My peers, you know, I know I would be going down the street doing it. They'd say, come on and play. And I'd jump in for a while and then I'd just keep going. I knew that I was part of everything, even though I was always just moving, seeing, looking, but I had very few words to say. Until I started teaching. And I started off with preschool kids, parks and community centers and whatever.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like, because you were kind of quiet in the vocalization of thoughts, do you feel like the mediums that you work with or that art allowed you to kind of express in ways that you didn't necessarily emote vocally?
Yeah, but I didn't think of it that way. I never thought of it.
Not consciously?
Yeah, not consciously, right. And when I'd go to the hardware stores, these old guys were from Europe and everywhere. They said, "What you doing now?" I said, "I'm doing so and so." And they said, "Well, give me that tool. We'll sharpen it, or we'll do this." So I learned a lot just.
Seems like that's the kind of recurring theme and the recurring reminder throughout your whole process is a reliance on community and community's kind of faith in you.
Very much so.
Do you have any advice for us, for my generation, where we struggle to try and maintain community? We have so many conversations, you and I, about technology and how technology has been a kind of thing that maybe is preventing us.
Yeah, it erases us.
You know, from having a real kind of connection with each other. Do you have advice for us on how we can reconnect with each other, how we can refound or rebuild communities so that we can have that kind of connectivity, that kind of healing that so much of your work expresses?
I think you'll have it, you know. I think just as you get older, you'll release the things that you might think why you were doing it and find out why you were really doing it. You know, if we just live to the next. But no, I don't have any advice other than that you have that tattoo on you every place you've been, what you've seen, what you walked away from, what you walked through. It's all there. And it's just arranging itself to be who you've always been from the very beginning. You know, just the clothes change.
Dreaming is a liberatory act. In these times where so little about our future is assured, we look to the healers, we look to the artists, we look to the poets, we look to the griots, we look to the alchemists, we look to the activists to tell us how to move forward, how to heal, how to grow, how to seek liberation, how to move. All of them are dreamers. All of them are shapeshifters. And they offer new ways of looking so that we may go deeper into our human beingness, be more expansive and proud about who we are now and who we are called to become. It is this foundation, the bone and roots of our being, that Valerie Maynard, a sister comrade, a revolutionary seer and mother to many of us, triggers us to remember. Her works are reminders that we have always been and will always be beautiful. We have always been and will always be enough as we are. And it is this weapon, this proof of our humanness, our right to live and breathe and shake free of the shackles of supremacist limitations, that Maynard bequeaths to us to run with and expound upon for many generations to come. I'm grateful for you, sister, for your community. We are honored by you. We are honored by your presence, your work, and your commitment to community. We dream bigger because of you. We are stronger because of you. We thank you. You are loved, and you are greatly appreciated. Love you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Valerie and to Angela for a beautiful, wide-ranging, insightful conversation and a deeply personal one. We're grateful to you and your work. Thank you again, and we hope to see you soon at the BMA.
Okay, bless you.